we've got a platform right here. What do you want to say to people out there right now that are still speculating and still?
Well, the anger's not directed at that. The anger's directed at the entirety of my experience. Okay, like I told you, I was fed misinformation by the investigators in an effort to validate what I've already said or what I've told them, or to allow them some type of a backdoor way of validating, my information. Okay.
Okay.
I mean, they lied to me, and they told me things.
Tell me more about that. How do you feel about the? Okay.
So I'm mad because, and I went back to the CID commander, and I told him, I said, listen, I have to sit you down, and I want you to tell me, of all of the things that y'all said to me, what of it was false, what of it was real.
Right.
You can't leave me like this. Okay, you cannot leave me in this state of mind. I'm sorry. That's all he said. And I understand their purpose behind that. Their purpose is to, if I were in fact involved, to allow that to just sit and eat at me like cancer until something happens, whether it did or not.
Yeah.
But it's still, so that and how all these, how we, the situation with my father, that's bullshit of the highest order.
Yeah.
Can I explain the circumstances surrounding that?
I was going to ask you to explain that.
So me and my father went to we were up there doing an interview, and I don't even really know what we talked about. But we had left in different vehicles. I was headed to my house, and my dad was headed to my sister's house where they were staying. And because they had to fly in from San Diego. And so on my way home, I get a phone call from a news reporter guy that we all know and on Channel 4, and he said, "Hey, Brandon, what's the story about this bloody shirt that your dad turned in?" And I said, "I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, what happened?" And he said that, well, your dad had a bloody shirt, and he turned it in to the laundering folks there in Midlothian, and they turned it over to the police. I said, "Man, I have no clue what you're talking about." So then I get a phone call from, as soon as I hang up from he said, "Well, we're going to head back to the station and get some answers." I said, "Okay." I get a phone call from the kids at the house. There's helicopters flying over my house, like 3 of them.
Oh, no.
So I called my dad, and we were still en route back to our homes, and I said, "Hey, Dad, what's the deal with this bloody shirt?" And he said, "Well, Christy's dog attacked our Chihuahua and killed it."
Oh, no.
And he said, "I had to take the dog to the vet, and, it was dead." And he said, "I didn't want to tell you that because I figured it was insignificant given what you're experiencing right now, and I just didn't feel it was important." And I said, "Well, you better turn around and let's head back to the police station because the media's showing up, and they want some answers behind this bloody shirt." And I said, I don't know of any other way to handle this, but if we don't say something, this is going to get completely out of control. Right. So we went up there for that sole reason of just stomping the fire out, putting it out immediately. And, my dad, he's just, he has ankylosing spondylitis, so he's all hunched over, and he walks like he has a pretty distinct walk to him. But, the look that you see on our face, that look is because we were at the pinnacle of a 3-ring circus. Okay? And that's the point, that's the part nobody understands. And my dad is a very matter-of-fact kind of guy too, and if you want to push him into a corner, you better look out. I mean, it's not good.
Yeah.
And I could tell by his demeanor that he felt he was being scrutinized as being involved in this. And so the public reaction surrounding that was just horrible. What we set out to do ended up causing something else.
Looking back, does your dad ever say, well, it probably wasn't a good idea for me to do that? Or, but you just don't
We could have gone about it in a different way, but what had happened unfolded so fast.
Right.
That there was no time to, and plus you got to understand the state of mind that we're in.
That's what I was going to say.
We can't really sit down and draw out a logical means of handling that, other than just reactive. That's all we could do.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's just, so that goes back to this anger thing, and like I said, there were people of pretty questionable character that reached out to my family.
Really?
And did some crazy things. Crazy. How about sitting at the dinner table with your family? Missy's mom's sitting there, and we're all sitting there at the dinner table. And I get a text from an unknown number on my phone. And I'll pull it up, and it says, you sorry, MF. How could you do this? And I didn't know who it was. So I jump up from the table, and this is after several people have reached out to me, so you're starting to kind of freak here.
Yeah.
And so I jumped up out of the table, drove straight to the Midlothian Police Department, which is completely out of their jurisdiction, but it's their matter, okay?
Right.
And
you're like,
started
here,
banging on the door. I said, who is this? Help me figure this out.
Yeah.
And figured it out.
Good.
Then there was another individual who reached out to me in a sympathetic manner and befriended me on the basis of consolement and all of these kinds of things, sympathy, only to find out that she befriended me to gain her trust. And while on the flip side of her agenda, she was throwing me under the bus, told me, we own an oil company, but it's not the oil company like in the exploratory sense where you're making millions of dollars. We sell fuel and lubricants, okay? Like Pyramid Oil Company here locally, same operation.
Right.
But, she starts throwing things out there to people that, we own this big oil company and we have resources in Mexico and all this stuff. And in a roundabout way, bad-mouthing our business, our reputation, and all of these kinds of things. So, and this goes on and on. I mean, this goes on and on. And this person created this blog, which, a blog about Missy's murder and stuff. And she would monitor the IP traffic coming into this blog. Then she would take the IP addresses and backtrace them for people who weren't on a VPN, okay? And she traced it to, should I say this? Like Patrick Wilson, all kinds of people.
To like prominent people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she would throw them under the bus believing that there was a conspiracy of Ellis County officials covering this up. I mean, this goes on and on and on.
Right.
And
people had way too much time on their hands.
When you're dealing with what I'm dealing with, or anybody for that matter, to have to contend with something that is so off the charts weird, okay?
Right.
It's just like pouring gasoline on a fire. But
and so
I tried to be proactively
helpful.
Absolutely, because I know that they had to rule me out, and so I was going to do whatever was necessary for them to close the book on Brandon Bevers and open it on somebody else. I wanted to get that out of the way, so I was fully voluntary with everything and all forms of information. As a matter of fact, the lead investigator at the onset of this, I asked him, I said, "Are you capable of moving in with me?" Because I wanted him to live with me. I said, "You are going to know who I am and what I'm made of. Move someone in my house."
That's actually a good idea.
Yeah. I said, somebody packed their bags, moving in.
What did they say?
Oh, we can't do that. So anyway, it finally got to a point where I felt comfortable with their assessment of me. Okay, I felt comfortable.
Right.
And I started feeling. I actually took comfort in being at that police station. Okay, I took comfort in being there because I wanted to know that these guys are working on this and that they are not getting sidetracked for something stupid or something. I felt comforted in being a part of the process.
Right. And
I want to know who did this.
And in the time that they're had their eyes on you, whoever did do this
Absolutely.
is getting further out of their sight. And, you hear that after something happens or a child goes missing, the first 24 hours are so critical. And so this was going on weeks and months that you felt like, hey,
I didn't feel comfortable. We had a big family meeting in June of that year. Mm-hmm. And they set everybody down at a humongous conference table and just presented what they could. I don't really know what the purpose behind that was. It was a little too revealing, if you ask me. I think they should have been a little more tight-lipped about it.
Were your daughters in there too?
No.
Oh, good.
It wasn't revealing in the graphic sense. It was revealing of just what they had determined, what they've looked at, and curiosities, which are actually forms of evidence and things like that. Mm-hmm. So. And that was comforting. And let me tell you something. The chief at Midlothian, Chief Smith, he's a very kind individual, and he has people in his their best interest in his mind.
Right.
And our comfort was a priority to him. Mm-hmm. Okay. And they did more than any other. Had this happened anywhere else, like in the city of Dallas, it would have been a closed door situation from day one.
Yeah.
And we would not have had the interaction, and I still have interaction with these people.
That is good.
Still to this day. So there's always some degree of comfort that you can talk to these people, pick up a phone and say, hey, of course they're not going to tell you anything anymore. They're really tight-lipped because they do not want. They don't want to spoil something.
Right.
And
I did see where just recently they brought in a new person or two new people. Mm-hmm. So, and it's not a cold case. It's an active case. So, do you feel like, I saw the billboard recently that went up on 287 and it's $40,000. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that is going to help?
Well,
do you feel
when it got to a point where we felt, as a family, we felt helpless in, the desire for resolve is so great. You start thinking of off the wall things. What can I do here? You have the investigators working on evidentiary type things that are, compelling type things that could put someone behind bars and, things like that. Then you have the family. What can they do? How can they feel proactive about this?
Right.
So you start thinking about reward money. You start thinking about billboards. You start thinking about pamphlets, all kinds of stuff. And we considered all of those kinds of things, talked to several people. I have a friend of mine who is a sergeant investigator in Mansfield. Mm-hmm. And he worked the crime scene. Missy's crime scene, and I happen to know this guy.
That's great, I would think.
And I was talking to him. I say, hey, what do you think about this? What? And he's like, well, we don't know if it'll ever produce results. We've tried this, we've tried that, with no results. It's just a toss-up. It's just a toss-up. But if you feel proactive in doing something, then do it. Okay?
Right.
And if the community feels proactive about doing something, do it.
Yeah, that's a great statement, because I feel like, Brandon, just hearing you talk, and the frustration is what's causing the anger, the frustration with the whole big picture. But I feel like until someone is found guilty of this,
absolutely,
you are not going to have the closure.
Nope. No.
And that's hard for your girls, and
it's you know, the bereavement process, the grieving process, coincides with the jailhouse door slamming on this person.
Yeah.
That's what it coincides with. Now, what are we going to do between now and then? You know, if they made an arrest tomorrow, what is it going to be, 4 years before a court date?
Yeah.
And then, you know.
But do you think you would feel better if they make an arrest? Do you think you'll start that closure process a little bit?
No, not really. I mean, it's a first step. It would be the first step, but it's not the final step.
No, it's not.
So,
well, I want to be proactive, and I told you this earlier. I want to give $10,000 to Crime Stoppers to make that 40 into a 50. And that's just because I feel led to do it, and I want to do it, and I have the ability to do it. And maybe, maybe an extra 10,000, because there is somebody out there that knows something, and maybe that'll make a difference. So that's something I feel led to do.
Appreciate it very much.
You're welcome. And maybe that 50,000, that's a lot of money. Maybe there's somebody out there that does have a valid tip.
We have, right now we have an additional $100,000 pledged, and we're waiting for that to go through the right channels. That Crime Stoppers, nor the media, nor Midlothian PD will acknowledge just a verbal commitment of that. It has to be, those funds have to be deposited with Crime Stoppers.
Right.
We have an individual who wants to put out $100,000. They're a little hesitant to deposit $100,000 somewhere that's not actively doing anything.
Right.
For an unknown period of time, so that's a pretty tough call.
What is your relationship today with the media?
Not too bueno.
Why is that?
The story's important. The story's more important than the individual.
Right.
I guarantee you. I don't give a damn what anybody says.
And you've experienced that firsthand.
Oh yeah, I've experienced it multiple times. Okay, here's the deal. Let me put it in this way. Anytime the purpose of the interviews, whether it was me or with my children, or anything media related, in my mind, was to speak to that person. That was the audience. It wasn't anything about anybody else. It wasn't about sensationalism. It wasn't about resolving the public curiosity or concerns. I don't give a damn about any of that. Mm-hmm. It was about speaking to that person. That person, hey, are you watching, you son of a bitch? That's who. Yeah. It's for you. That billboard on 287, it's not for anybody. It's for that son of a bitch that knows something.
Right.
That's who it's for. Oh, let's keep the story out in the public so we can talk about it. Well, bullshit. There's one or possibly two other people that know something, and that is who we need to talk to. That's who we're talking to. It's not for any of these other. It's not for any other form of freaking-tainment.
Yeah.
None.
So we were just talking a minute ago about how you and I both, especially you, feel like now if anything bad happens, even, you're almost jaded or numb to it, and nothing's scary anymore. And you were talking about you saw an accident happen on the road. Tell us about that.
Well,
because this is what happens in complicated grief. These things happen, and we almost feel.
I have to back up because I have to explain how I arrived at the mindset first.
Okay.
And
the analyzing yourself.
Correct. When I was 9 or 10 years old,
mm-hmm.
All we had was maybe 5 channels of TV. Okay.
If you were lucky.
And I started noticing every evening the news would be on, and I started kind of taking note of all of this stuff going on in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It was always something bad, tragic or something. I didn't grow up, I grew up believing that all people are good and well-intentioned, and I didn't know that tragedy occurred on the scale that it did. Okay, I mean, what parent's going to teach their kids that?
Right.
So, when I started seeing this on TV, I felt bad, and I didn't grow up in church.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't grow up in a religious house or anything. But I went outside one day, and it started weighing on me. And I looked up to God and I said, "Hey, God, I remember this, but I only recalled it after this happened, after we lost Missy. I recalled this."
Okay.
So I said, "Hey, God, why don't you take all this away and just give it all to me? Take and put it on my shoulders and let all these people live in comfort and peace and take away all this."
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for about 30 minutes. And
that's a heavy burden to want
yeah,
to.
you're always told be careful what you pray for.
Right.
So anyway, that happened when I was 9 or so. And I live life, and life is, everything's hunky-dory. I set out to do something, went to college, got it, achieved it, went on to do some other things, achieved all that, got married, had kids. We were rocking and rolling. We had no hardships, none.
What year did you and Missy marry?
In 98. We met in 96. So, but we had no hardships, and it honestly got to a point over a number of years. I'm thinking to myself, I thought to myself, this is surreal. Is it really supposed to be this easy? Is it really supposed to be this? I felt like something was just on the cusp of happening.
Everything's so good, something bad's about to happen.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I used to have that feeling all the time.
So, in a strange way, you could say I was blessed if you want to, I was blessed, absolutely. Mm-hmm. But anyway, after we lost Missy, and having to, with nowhere to turn, I went to counseling, okay? And I went this counselor that I found happened to be my age, and she was pretty good. She dealt with a lot of PTSD, veterans, mm-hmm. Helped them through that, and I found out her boyfriend or her fiance, they like to fish, and I love to fish. So we would talk, hey, where y'all going fishing, blah blah blah. And so she helped me deal with a lot of things.
Did you go see that counselor once a week, or
once a week
for like a year, or?
No, I went for about 6 months at the longest. What it ended up happening was, I felt like I had pretty well reached any useful form of counseling from her. Mm-hmm. I felt like I was just regurgitating the same thing every time we went. So I stopped that, but and then later I was under PSD at this time, and I didn't know it. Okay. She was just a licensed counselor. She wasn't a psychiatrist.
Right.
But I still had PTSD, and so I went to a psychiatrist after that. And the psychiatrist, he was a very highly respected psychiatrist that treated PTSD exclusively. And he's received commendations from 5-star generals. This guy's run the gamut on PTSD stuff. He treated me with Vraylar, which at the time was not very old, but that stuff works miracles.
What is that?
It's called Vraylar.
I've heard of that. Is that a pill or?
It's a pill, yeah. But in conjunction with counseling sessions with him, and I looked up one day and I didn't have all of those PTSD related things that were going on. They all went away.
So to somebody out there that's going through a horrific loss, which is what you have went through, would you say that getting a counselor or a psychiatrist is key?
Absolutely. Here, if I can offer any piece of advice, if you lose somebody, it doesn't matter if you lost them expectedly or unexpectedly. If they had cancer for 6 months and you feel that losing them was more beneficial than them
to continue
living
to suffer
under those conditions, it doesn't matter what you've lost. If it saddened you, you're in the first stage of grief, and everybody should go to a counselor who will explain to them what should be expected from this.
Right.
Okay?
What's normal, and it's normal what you're feeling, and that's what I like to hear is what you're feeling is very normal.
Correct.
So you don't feel, and like we said earlier, getting that complicated grief, CG, knowing that there's a name to it really helps to compartmentalize it and realize that this isn't just normal grief. This is complicated, and I'm okay to feel the way that I feel.
Yeah, if you can go somewhere and they can explain to you and validate what you're experiencing, and provide you with tools that are will relate to what will happen as you progress, because it shouldn't be just you shouldn't be stuck in one state of this,
by yourself.
How this should progress, how it should resolve, hopefully. Those are tools that we all need. We're grieving is humanly necessary. Okay?
Right, to heal.
It is absolutely necessary that we grieve and heal. But grieving alone is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Grieving alone without resources, tools, people, it's a no-win deal. I mean, it's a bad deal.
On the next episode of Think Theo, have you moved on at all in relationships? Had dates? Has that,
Yeah, I've actually remarried.
Be sure to subscribe to my podcast and my video cast on YouTube, which will have exclusive content not available on the podcast.